The time has come for the Swag Man to tell you his knowledge about the Forest Cup. This is the Forest Cup Simplified. I know a lot of you are probably already familiar with the Forest Cup to some degree, so in this video I'm going to be going over some hot, decisive topics such as, Ice Beam versus Aerial Ace on the Mantine. Do you want to go with Thunder or Flash Cannon on your Ferrothorn? Those kind of ideas. You want to go Ampharos or Galvan Chula, right? So those kind of ideas, perspectives, of course. Now, if you don't know what the Forest Cup is altogether, you're like, well, what's this nonsense, Ryan Swag? Well, it's part of the Silph Arena. Silph Arena is like an independent Go Battle League of sorts, and the Forest Cup, these cups have restricted typings, restricted generations, and ban lists, stuff like that. So more interesting kind of Go Battle League. So if you want more information on the Forest Cup or the Silph Arena in general, link in the description to silph.gg to get you learned up on that. At any rate, I know you guys have been waiting for 2 weeks, so let's get into it. Forest Cup Simplified. Swagman style. What? And to make things a little interesting, I'm going to have some B-roll of me battling Pogo Amigo Texas below me. So you can see some Forest Cup action while I talk about some Forest Cup action. So starting out, we have the staples of the Forest Cup meta, and that is Ferrothorn, Mantine, and Blaziken. There is some wiggle room with the Mantine and the Blaziken, but one thing is for certain, there is no wiggle room around the Ferrothorn. The reason why Ferrothorn is so good is because, well, it has the potential to beat basically everything in the Forest Cup, just straight up. It's good as a safe switch, it's good as a lead, it's good in the back. It handles everything, and it's just something that your opponent has to deal with, or they're going to get dealt with by the Ferrothorn. So the time has come. If you haven't built a Ferrothorn already, building Ferrothorn time. Now when it comes to Ferrothorn, there is some debate. Obviously in this cup you're going to be going with the Power Whip because, heavy grass type damage, it's best neutral attack, so a lot of things are going to get Power Whipped here. So what's the next attack do you want to use? Do you want to use Flash Cannon or do you want to use Thunder? Well, Thunder in the Open Great League is mostly there for the Skarmory, and there is no Skarmory in this cup. But when it comes to the Flash Cannon is mostly there for the Altaria, and there is no Altaria in this cup. So which move do you want to pick? Right now, I'd have to say I'm mostly in favor of the Thunder. The reason why I'm so in favor of Thunder is because, well, this guy up here, Mantine. Mantine ain't no Skarmory. In fact, it's doubly weak to Electric instead of just singly weak. And if you have Thunder, then you can most consistently take out the Mantine. If you have Flash Cannon, you're not hitting Water types with Flash Cannon, you're not hitting Electric, you're not hitting Fire with Flash Cannon, you're hitting all these guys with Power Whip, and maybe Thunder on this group here. The Flash Cannon is mostly there for the opposing Grass-type Pokemon. So you want to poke them a little bit harder, right? But at the end of the day, I feel like having a secondary Grass on the Forest Cup team isn't as common as somebody having a Mantine, for example, so I feel like the Thunder is definitely coming up more often than the Flash Cannon will. Now when it comes to the Mantine versus Ferrothorn, I know there's a lot of people that think that if Ferrothorn doesn't shield the first charge move, that it can beat Mantine no matter what charge moves it has, no matter when it throws Bubble Beam or whatever, and I'm not really finding that to be true here. I mean, if Mantine throws the Bubble Beam first, no matter how it plays out in the end game, Mantine still can beat the Ferrothorn. So once again, definitely want to have the Thunder for that. However, important thing to keep in mind if you are using Ferrothorn, no matter what charge move you decide to go with, the Mantine will be throwing the Bubble Beam first. Because if they don't throw the Bubble Beam first, then they don't have the damage reduction on your fast moves and charge moves that they need in order to overcome you. So at the end of the day, you're not shielding the first charge move, no matter what. Another cool thing to note with Ferrothorn is it can beat the Blaziken. You might not think it because, Fire-type Pokemon, counter damage, really heavy, gonna take this guy out. But if you land 2 Power Whips, yeah, you can beat Blaziken. So Blaziken doesn't have a super comfortable time farming down the Ferrothorn. That's why people may want to consider Sunny Castform. Sunny Castform does have a more comfortable time farming down the Ferrothorn, but Blaziken definitely has to spend a shield in order to do the full job. And then, similarly, if you are using Blaziken to fight against the Ferrothorn, it could be in your best interest to just straight counter it down, so then you've got all this energy built up for the next Pokemon that's in, or maybe almost completely counter it down and then quick snipe it at the end so it doesn't get its secondary charge move, if it did get a bit of an energy lead on you like that. At the end of the day, the basic idea is Blaziken's going to beat this guy. just how prepared do you want Blaziken to be for the next Pokemon in. So when it comes to the Blaziken in general, there is a bit of a debate. Do you want to use an Elite Charge TM to get the Legacy Stone Edge on it, or do you just want to stick with Blast Burn? Overall, I can't say which move is the better one overall, but what I can say is that they are both contingency moves, and I don't feel like spending an Elite Charge TM on a contingency move is the best idea overall. So I would much rather hold on to an Elite Charge TM rather than spend it on Stone Edge on Blaziken. The main reason why people consider Stone Edge on Blaziken is that you might be able to flip the Mantine matchup, but Mantine still basically beats you no matter what. To illustrate here on PvPoke, in a straight matchup, you can't even reach Blaze Kick and Stone Edge for it to beat you in the one shield situation. So as long as it shields at least one of your attacks and you don't have much of an energy lead on it, it's just going to beat you straight Bubble Beam. Now you could consider, what about a one counter fast move lead? They have to swap into you, right? Well, yeah, you still don't reach the Stone Edge. However, the two counter energy lead, that's the stuff to get to the Stone Edge. But once again, in the one shield situation, they still beat you. Well, depending on your IVs and their IVs, that is like 3 damage, so who knows. But I'd say the ball is mostly in Mantine's court here. And that's basically the one situation where you really want to have the Stone Edge. Stone Edge can also help against maybe Kingdra or Azumarill, but I feel like Azumarill and Kingdra are kind of dying off as time goes on with the Forest Cup. I don't feel like these are very consistent picks for a lot of teams, so having the Stone Edge for these contingency picks, definitely not all that helpful. So the only time that you really want to use the Stone Edge, generally is going to be to, hurt the Mantine that caught you. But then after that first fight where that happens and they're like, okay, you got Stone Edge, well then they'll know to shield the Stone Edge, which doesn't work out too well for your Blaziken there. Now next to Blaziken, we do have the Sunny Boy that people might consider using over the Blaziken. The main advantages to using Sunny Boy is that you do have more aggressive damage on the Ferrothorn, so you are able to just burn it down a lot more quickly. You have less to fear from the Power Whips, etc., so that can be good. And then you have a better time against the Galvan Chula. The Galvan Chula generally beats the Blaziken there, so now you beat it because super effective fast move damage. But when it comes to the Mud Boys generally have a nicer time against you. Yes, you do have the Solar Beam to threaten them, but I really don't think the Solar Beam is going to be landed as often as we'd like it to be. And then when it comes to the Badger over here, I don't know, man. You don't have anything cool going on with your fast move to hurt things. And then you're basically after that the same idea as Sunny Boy, so I think Sunny Boy's definitely got tons of advantages over Typhlosion. Then next on the chopping block here is Mantine. Which secondary charge move do you want on it? The basic is that you're using the wing attack and you want to use the super ubiquitous Bubble Beam debuff and attack there. But what about that secondary charge move? Well, the Ice Beam I'd say is generally the quote-unquote better attack because it has better neutral damage. It's just a heavier hit overall. So if you are up against an opponent in the first round, you can throw the Ice Beam, you can land the Ice Beam, and that could possibly flip a matchup that Mantine is in. And then in subsequent battles against your opponent, that's going to give them a lot more shield pressure. You could be throwing Ice Beam, you could be throwing Bubble Beam. They don't want to get hit by Ice Beam, they don't mind getting hit by Bubble Beam. You know what I'm saying? So then why even consider Aerial Ace? Well, the big thing with Aerial Ace is that it allows you to beat Azumarill much more consistently than Ice Beam would let you. And then the Aerial Ace does allow you to overcome non-Thunder Ferrothorn, which is really nice. And grass types in general, you're going to have a cleaner matchup if you're using the Aerial Ace, depending on the grass type, depending on prior damage, etc. Because the Ice Beam does do more base damage, but the Aerial Ace generally more consistent. That said, if you do go for the Aerial Ace, Ampharos kind of laughs at you a little bit because none of your attacks really do a whole lot of damage to Ampharos, where the Ice Beam would actually kind of hurt it. When it comes to Galvan Chula, they're both neutral attacks. Galvan Chula really doesn't want to get hit by either of them, so yeah. Now, a lot of people are considering not using Mantine. It's super weak to electric-type Pokemon, so if you have to swap in Mantine and they swap in an electric-type Pokemon, well then it's basically like lights out for the Mantine there. Mantine did nothing but give your opponent a massive edge. So some people are considering not using the Mantine. If you are thinking about that, then I think you definitely need to fill Mantine's shoes with a secondary water-type Pokemon. One that comes to mind immediately are the Mud Boys. The Mud Boys, ground-type, water-type Pokemon. They don't do anything against the grass types or Ferrothorn, but hey, what was Mantine doing anyways? The Ferrothorns, they're carrying Thunder, right? That said, you will want to make sure that you have an improved game plan for fighting against grass-type Pokemon. Mantine gave you some comfort there. Even though Thunder Ferrothorn was whomping it down, well now you're relying on Mud Boys to do the Mantine job. Not a good idea. if grass types can easily blaze you down there. So there's a risk of going without the Mantine. So you might need to rope in like fighting types to pummel them down, or possibly even bug type Pokemon to help you out there. So those are the risks, the struggles that you will encounter if you go Mantine-less in the Forest Cup. Then after the big three, you have the next most important group of the Forest Cup, and those are the electric type Pokemon. Featured here we have Ampharos and Galvan Chula. So Ampharos is generally the quote-unquote better electric type Pokemon. It's most consistent. It's got Volt Switch and Thunder Punch, which is a better combo than Volt Switch and Discharge, and it's got Focus Blast, which is just massive neutral damage to basically everything that resists electric, and can just nuke the heck out of the Ferrothorn here, which is really nice. And no finesse needed to beat the fire-type Pokemon, which is also good for the Ampharos. So why would you consider Galvan Chula here? Well, Galvan Chula has the Bug Buzz. The Bug Buzz is more threatening to all of the Grass-type Pokemon, which is nice. Can take them all out, and it does allow it to potentially take out the Ferrothorn, circumstances depending. Additionally, it can defeat the Ampharos more often than the Ampharos can beat it. If Ampharos lands Focus Blast, then Ampharos can beat Galvan Chula, but if Galvan Chula can land the Bug Buzz, then Galvan Chula is going to beat Ampharos. Which one is more likely to happen? You tell me. And then when it comes to more neutral matchups, such as like the Mud Boys, for example, or Stunfisk might be a little bit more common than the Mud Boys are. The Bug Buzz won't take them out, but it does heavier like poke damage to them. It's more likely to land and hit than a single Focus Blast will be. So like the propensity of you throwing 2 Bug Buzzes, higher than the propensity of you throwing even possibly 1 Focus Blast, circumstances depending. So I think that can be pretty nice to weaken these guys and get a little bit further ahead for your next Pokemon that comes in. So at the end of the day, I'd have to say Ampharos is probably more high risk, high reward when it comes to being an electric type Pokemon, where Galvan Chula is a little bit more consistent for more matchups than Ampharos will be. Now, aside from these two, there are other electric type Pokemon to consider. I'd say out of this group, many of them should be considered as a secondary electric type though. They can't really handle the primary electric type role. So after, these 4 main groups here, you got the 2 other Pokemon, maybe consider a secondary alternative electric type for that. But one Pokemon that can compete for the main role is Zebstrika. Zebstrika does have that Flame Charge, so it is able to have that swag on the Ferrothorn there, which is pretty nice. And then it also has Wild Charge to work with, which can be pretty awesome. Problem I have with Zebstrika is it's more of like a energy advantage, shield advantage, late game type Pokemon compared to these guys. These guys can function really well in neutral matchups, neutral shield situations, in the lead slot, for example, whereas Zebstrika is going to be more in the back, I feel. So I feel like these guys are definitely more versatile than the Zeb can be. But the Zeb definitely can be a deadly Pokemon. And that covers the Fab 4 of the Forest Cup, right? You can see here on team building, like Water, Mantine, Fire, Blaziken, Grass, Fortress, Electric, these guys. So who are the other 2 Pokemon you want to have on your team? 2 main things to consider right away are Stunfisk and Fighting type Pokemon. The Stunfisk, for example, has advantage over everything here that isn't a Grass type. So 3 out of the 4 main groups, it's beating them very, very well. And then when it comes to the Fighting type Pokemon, primarily Heracross and Breloom, not so much Escavalier in the back there. But these 2 guys, yeah, they womp everything here except for Mantine, which is also really freaking nice. So those are like 2 types that you're going to want to think about maybe putting on your team or working against when you're making your other picks. Because if everybody's using freaking Stunfisk down here, well then using like an extra Grass type Pokemon or maybe a Mud Boy could be a more, tasty consideration. When it comes to the alternative Grass type Pokemon, the only 2 I really like in this group for this cup are Meganium and Cherrim. Meganium here is just the solid general Grass type Pokemon, super tanky Pokemon. It's got the Earthquake. It can possibly overcome the Ferrothorn. It can overcome the Fire type Pokemon. It can overcome Mantine. It can just beat everybody given the right circumstances because it's so tanky, so good, so consistent. Then when it comes to Cherrim, well, Cherrim's the Grass type Pokemon that's secretly a Fire type Pokemon with the Weather Ball. And if this guy's romping around being the best thing ever, yeah, that Weather Ball definitely carries some weight in this particular cup. If you go with the Bullet Seed set, you can reach the Fire type charge moves that much more quickly, and then you can also still maintain your Grass type threat with the Solar Beam, which you'll get to relatively quickly with the Bullet Seed, and then you can also consider using the Razor Leaf. Leaf. The Razor Leaf makes you more of a grass type Pokemon, so you're basically like pumping, water type, ground type, electric type Pokemon full of leaves there, and it makes those matchups way more consistent than the Bullet Seed set would be. And then you also have the Weather Ball to still threaten other grass type Pokemon with. That said, your Weather Ball is going to be extremely slow compared to how fast they can reach their charge moves, which could be problematic for the Cherrim. Then when it comes to the Mud Boys, I feel like the Mud Boys should mostly be considered if you're thinking about not using Mantine, if that makes sense, because they hammer down on the electric types, they hammer down on the fire types. They definitely lose to the grass type Pokemon, but they do the other jobs so well that all you really have to focus on after picking a Mud Boy is making sure you don't lose to grass types. So I think they're good, but I think they really come to like a specific team comp that wants them. They're not like ubiquitously good. A lot of people seem to be in favor of the Quagsire here. It's got the Stone Edge damage, so it can possibly swag on this guy here. But I feel like the Forest Cup is too dynamic for it. Like I said before, the Forest Cup is a little bit too fast for a lot of Pokemon to keep up with, and given that this guy's charge moves are so dang slow, I feel like it could just get a little bit outsped as far as doing anything relevant goes. For example, even if you do beat the Mantine, something like Blaziken could come in with just counter damage and take you out before you can do anything relevant. So I think that is a big problem with the Quagsire here. Then when it comes to Whiscash, I feel like there's just too much grass type threat on it. Like, what are you going to do? Land, Blizzard? And then when it comes to Mantine, it's like, what are you going to do, man? Land, Blizzard? So I feel like things are a little bit awkward for the Whiscash. I'm not super in favor of it. That said, it does have the Mud Bomb spam, which these guys and these guys really don't appreciate, so that could be really nice for it. That said, if you do want to make the most out of using your Whiscash, you probably want to get a little extra farm in before you drop the hatchet on these Pokemon. And in doing so, you could make yourself vulnerable to, getting Focus Blast, for example, or them getting an additional Bug Buzz or something like that. So yeah, I think things are just a little bit too tricky for this guy. And then we got Swampert. And Swampert's got a better time against Grass-type Pokemon because it's got the Sludge Wave to threaten them with. But like, you're a Mud Boy trying to threaten Grass-type Pokemon. More often than not, that doesn't really work out for you. You just get farmed down really heavily. Cool thing about it, though, making up for that, is that you do have the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is just like one of the best charge moves in the game, even though it did get nerfed, and you can just take things out right quick or just hurt them a lot with the Hydro Cannon. So Swampert. And then of course Swampert with the Hydro Cannon does beat the Whiscash. So people thinking Whiscash is great because it's got the Blizzard access. Well, lo and behold, it's Swampert taking you out with the Hydro Cannons. You can see it now, people getting mad in the comments about Swagman not liking the Mud Boys, but I don't like the Mud Boys that much in this cup, I really don't. Then when it comes to the alternative electric type Pokemon, like I said before, I feel like they're mostly secondary electric type Pokemon. You definitely want to use one of these guys. The only one that competes with them almost is going to be the Substrika, but overall I feel like definitely want these guys, and then maybe an alternative electric type Pokemon. And then when it comes to the alternative electric types, Stumpfisk is just really super insanely good. Probably the only one you should be considering running alongside them. Maybe Lantern if you're not going with the Mantine. Then I already talked about the fighting type Pokemon here. Escavalier is hanging out in the back, but I really don't like Escavalier in this cup just because of its weaknesses. I just feel like it's kind of pummeled down a bit too quickly, and then it doesn't even have stab on counter. It's not even that tanky. I don't know. These guys, I feel like they just do it better. And finally, you got the Bug-type Pokemon. And I feel like this is another group that you're going to see on a lot of teams. So Stumpfisk on a lot of teams, counter users on a lot of teams, and then these guys on a lot of teams. Maybe more so Vespiquen and the Wormadam here. One big bug type that you're going to probably see on a lot of teams is going to be Wormadam. Wormadam has Confusion, and in this cup, Confusion for the most part is completely and entirely unresisted. The only Pokemon that resists it is Ferrothorn, and we got Bug Buzz to poke at the Ferrothorn, and if Ferrothorn doesn't have Thunder, well, things are even more in favor for the Wormadam here. So Wormadam, definitely a big threatening Pokemon. I mean, super weak to fire, but the main fire type is Blaziken, and we're super effective on Blaziken, so watch out, Blaziken. And then another big one to consider is Vespiquen. Vespiquen has Air Slash damage, so it's like a similar idea to the Wormadam here, but more harassment onto Grass-type Pokemon than the Wormadam has. At any rate, that's all I got to say on the Forest Cup. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up. I'll be happy to help you out. And if you've already won some Forest Cups, what kind of spicy strategies are you using? Let us know. And if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these patron supporters. If you want to support the Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. If you got some questions on the Forest Cup, like, man, how do I build a team? Should I be using Flash Cannon or Thunder on my Fortress, etc.? Ferrothorn, wow. But